Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Is the GNU going to hold, or is it going to collapse? There's so much going on around the GNU, and not all of it is positive in terms of the ANC and its interaction with its alliance partners. But before we get on to the main news story, can I yet again ask you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to support the work I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. Check these dark rings. Now I'm really tired. Buy me a coffee. So on to the first news story. It's actually around Tito. Shame. Poor Tito. We'll miss his social media posts around his chicken cooking. Man, his chicken cooking skills were terrible. But you know, it was actually very interesting because a tweet has now surfaced around a conversation that he actually had with his son when he was still alive. And in it, his son basically asked him, Dad, is there anything else in life you want to achieve? And he says, no, I've done everything I want to do. Nothing left for me to do. I've done everything all a reasonable person could do. Just give me a decent burial when the time comes. And as to that, his son says, Dad, that's unreasonable for you to say. You're going nowhere. And he says, at the end of his tweet, that's nice. It is nice. The child would think that. But obviously a father's mortality is guaranteed. And it's very nice to think that Tito actually was very satisfied with his life. It's probably why he spent the rest of his days making terrible chickens. In any case, let's move on to the next news story. And that is around the ongoing palaver between Mbalula and Lesufi. I've got to admit, I know that last week Monday they had a big little fallout where they went to the NEC, had a 5-minute discussion around Mbalula saying, why is Lesufi bringing the GNU into disrepute? Paul Mashatile stood up, defended him, and that was pretty much the end of it, while Cyril played, Candy Crush on his iPad. Well, it's now come out that actually the palaver hasn't ended, because it turns out that Mbalula has actually told Lesufi not to act like Solly, the South African Communist Party, and we'll get onto him in a sec. He says that as far as he's concerned, Lesufi's actually been running a silent campaign against Mbalula, and he won't allow this because he's the Secretary General of the ANC, and Lesufi is actually below him in the structure. He says that the structure is that of national centralism, which basically means that the top leaders make the decisions and the lower plebs at the bottom need to follow it. And according to him, Lesufi's a pleb, so just stay in your lane and follow your orders. And Mbalula says that, as far as they go personally, they get on just fine. They're okay on a personal level. I don't know what okay means, but you see, what becomes interesting is that Helen Zille describes Lesufi as a rogue and as a stumbling block to an ANC-DA coalition in Gauteng. Now, as I said, Paul Mashatile actually came to his defense and said, well, he's pretty sure that Helen Zille and Lesufi could kind of settle their differences in the Gauteng local area. But if they can't, that's fine. The ANC must go its own way then, and that mustn't impact them nationally, because what happens in Gauteng doesn't have a reflection on the national levels. They work just fine. In fact, some people said that what would actually happen if Paul Mashatile were to take over as the successor of Cyril, would the DA try to get rid of him? Because for those of you who don't remember, underneath the 6th administration, the DA actually lodged a criminal complaint against Paul Mashatile following the publishing of a News 24 article. So they asked Paul, well, how do you get on with him? And he says, just fine, we get on just fine. Nobody's ever had an argument with me and we all just work together. Actually, that's kind of true, because John has been on a canvassing campaign internationally for business and investor support, and him and Paul seem to be on stage doing their jobs just fine, smiling, happy, shaking hands, doing all the usual dignitary stuff. Yeah, nothing to believe that those two won't get on. It's amazing what actually being in government and getting on does mean for each other, which actually comes on to the main news story, and that is around the South African Communist Party. And let's start off by using the old phrase that Seathle always says, it's about a big David liberty, never trust a commie. And as Citizen Concerned always says, Keklecha loves to say, beware the comrades. And in this instance, yeah, you should. Because you see, the SACP was invited to participate in the 100-day celebration of the GNU, which, let us not forget, includes the DA. Solly, the head of the South African Communist Party, declined to go because the GNU involves the neoliberal white supremacist DA party, and they didn't want them. They wanted the EFF, who, if we're reminded, in the elections got less votes than the DA. They're not that strategically important. But anyway, that's who they wanted, because, socialism. So interestingly enough, Solly says, I'm not actually talking badly about the ANC. I'm just talking badly about the things the ANC does. These things shouldn't be done in the name of the ANC. I ask you, Sully, which party do you represent? SACP or the ANC? Because, You're in an alliance, but you're not the same party, which means the SACP can't talk for the ANC either, buddy, because you're not part of the ANC. You're part of the SACP. Nobody voted for the SACP on the ballot box, did they? Let us not forget that. In any case, Fikile Mbalula, I gotta say, the guy keeps impressing me. He appears to have matured no end with the GNU. And the current Fikile Mbalula that we see is a long shot from what he was when he was the Minister of Transport. Like, he's actually really grown into the role, and it's like talking to a grown-up. Who knew? In any case, he came out and basically said the SACP missed an opportunity to reflect on the GNU, and specifically the work that the ANC-led GNU was doing. Now you see, this is very clever wording, because it means that all the successes being done by the GNU are now the ANC's successes, which helps it get to 2029, the next elections, and basically claim all the wins and say, you should give us back a majority again, because look what we did last time, even though there were 10 parties in the GNU. But anyway, it's just clever politicking. In any case, Mbalula says that the ANC didn't exactly campaign for a GNU. He says that it campaigned to lead the country alone as the sole arbitrator. Problem is, that's not what they got, did they? They lost the election, and what they had to do is ultimately form a GNU. According to Mbalula, this was actually the will of the public. He says the public didn't give them a mandate to rule on their own, and so they had to form a GNU, which actually involved parties like the DA, who are their ideological enemies. But they're still going to get along for the benefit of the country, not for the benefit of the party. But you see, the SACP says that the ANC has nothing to celebrate, because effectively they're working with neoliberal devils, and that the GNU actually symbolizes the ANC's defeat at an electoral level. And to that, Mbalula had this to say. He said, basically, why are we talking about this through the press? Like, you should have called me up or come to the meeting we were supposed to have this morning and have the conversation in person. Like, why are you talking about us through the press? And then Mbalula goes on even further and says, I'm not actually prepared to do this. Like, I've got business to do. I'm not going to sit here and do a tit for tat for you with the press. Like, if you want to do that, go somewhere else. And actually, that's the correct approach to do. I mean, like I said, Mbalula is really maturing as a politician. Mbalula goes on further to say, it's not like we just woke up one morning and said, let's just have a GNU. He says it went through the NEC. The NEC debated it. They went through contract negotiations and interacted with all the political parties to no end. This wasn't just a flash in the pan thing. For Solly to basically say that, this is just a poor reflection on everything, as if it was just done as a whim, he says, well, that's not what happened. And he says they shouldn't be treated as if that's how it just happened. And Mbalula says research shows that the GNU is incredibly popular. Business sentiment is very high. People want to come back to South Africa and invest here, and we should be celebrating over 200 days of no load shedding. He said a lot of energy is going in, especially from business, around economic growth and creating jobs. He says, yes, the ANC and the DA aren't allies, they're ideological adversaries. They're all working together for the purposes of benefiting the country. And what's Solly doing? Well, he's sitting there shouting his mouth off in the media. Now, some reports basically say that the reason that Solly got really upset is because he wasn't invited to talk at the GNU conference, the celebration. Yes, these communist man is like, they're not the center of attention. They just throw their toys at the cot, then everybody else is just disappointing and horrible. In any case, that's the news. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. You tell me what you think of the South African Communist Party. I must yet again remind everybody, nobody voted for these clowns. They're not on the ballot box, and yet they continue to shut off their mouth over and over again. Like, if they're this unhappy with the ANC, exit the tripartite, go and put yourself on the ballot box, and let's see how many tens of votes you get, because no one's voting for you. Let us not forget that they did actually try this once before in a small little local election, and it didn't turn out very well for them. But anyway, guys, that's my thought. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you around the ongoing saga of Mbalula and Lesufi. You can also let me know what you think of the GNU and the ongoing arguments with the SACP. Until tomorrow, bye.